So as you just guys saw in that awesome video, the American Revolution begins with a skirmish. I'm not going to call it a battle at Lexington on April 19th in the early morning. Paul Revere had warned these folks that eventually about 75 men under John Parker will meet them on Lexington Green or Lexington Commons. And he yells, "Disperse your rebels, lay down your arms, go home," right? And then, of course, Parker's famous for saying, "Stand your ground, don't fire upon, but if they mean to have a war, let it begin here." And that, of course, as that guy said, changes everything. And it'll be known as the shot heard around the world. Now, it'd have to be pretty loud to be heard around the world. But that comes, of course, from a famous poem written by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And what does it mean to say it was heard around the world? It means it shocked the world. It changed the world. One of the things AP wants you guys especially to know is that the American Revolution is going to inspire, well, less than great revolutions like the French Revolution, but it's going to inspire revolutions in Haiti. It's going to inspire revolutions in Central America under Simón de Bolívar, right? The Mexico Revolution or Mexican Revolution. And so that's what we mean of that, okay? Now, the next page here. The battle, after defeating the colonists at Lexington, the British then continue their march on to Concord. Now, at Concord, there is a real battle. I'll go ahead and let you see the video. I'll have to cue it up here for y'all to see that part. Okay, here we go. There's another scene from it, and I'll take you guys over to that part where you can see what happened at the North Bridge.
And the thigh. For the families in Lexington, the toll was unthinkable. 8 men lay dead. 9 more were wounded. Among the survivors, shock gave way to rage. They shouldered their muskets and set off toward Concord to vent their grief in British blood.
Now, this battle will be completely different. America will end up winning this one. You'll see some actual scenes of the old North Bridge where they fought.
Paul Revere never finished his midnight ride.
Yeah.
Just after 1 a.m., he was captured by a British patrol. But the alarm was carried to Concord by a local physician, Samuel Prescott, who had been recruited by Revere less than an hour earlier. As day broke on April 19th, virtually every town within 20 miles had been alerted that the Redcoats were coming.
And they're all going to head to Concord.
By 8 a.m., the British reached Concord to search for rebel arms. All they could find were 3 cannon, 60 casks of flour, and 500 pounds of musket balls.
They went door to door asking politely. There it is, the old North Bridge.
A mile and a half north of Concord, about 100 Redcoats were holding a small bridge. On a hill above them, 400 angry militiamen gathered and waited. The Concord militia was being steadily reinforced by men from neighboring Acton, Bedford,
like Ord Acton,
Carlisle. Yet they made no move until they saw smoke billowing over the town.
Yep.
The British were burning the few armaments they had found.
This is a guy's paintings by the name of Doolittle who was there actually and did these paintings.
They advanced on the North Bridge. Minuteman Amos Barrett reported he was within 15 rods of the Redcoats, about 80 yards, when they opened fire.
They fired 3 guns, one after the other. I see the balls striking the river on the right of me. Their balls whistled well.
Militia Major John Buttrick shouted, "Fire, fellow soldiers, for God's sake, fire!" In the exchange, 2 militiamen were killed. 4 of 8 British officers were wounded. 3 enlisted men fell dead, and the king's troops fell back.
Now, what will happen then is they will make their way back, as you guys will see here. So, I'm going to play a little video from you from Schoolhouse Rock. I had to endure it, so do you.
Set the nation on its ear, and the shot at Lexington heard round the world. When the British fired in the early dawn. Independence had begun. The die was cast, the rebel flag unfurled.
Sorry, that was too loud.
And on to Concord marched the foe to seize the arsenal. There you know, waiting folks, searching all around. Till our militia stopped them in their tracks. At the old North Bridge we turned them back and chased those redcoats back to Boston town.
This is how Mr. D learned
And
history.
the shot heard around the world was the start of the revolution. The Minutemen were ready on the move. Take your powder, take your gun, report to General Washington. Hurry, men, there's not an hour to lose. Now at famous Bunker Hill, even though we lost, it was quite a thrill. The rebel Colonel Prescott proved he was wise. Outnumbered and low on ammunition as the British stormed his position. He said, hold your fire till you see the whites of their eyes. Though the next few years were rough, General Washington's men proved they were tough. Those hungry, ragged boys would not be beat. One night they crossed the Delaware, surprised the Hessians in their lair, and at Valley Forge they just bundled up their feet. Now the shot heard round the world was the start of the revolution. The Minutemen were ready on the move. Take your blanket, take your sons, report to General Washington. We got our rights and now it's time to prove. Well, they showed such determination that they won the admiration of countries across the sea like France and Spain, who loaned the colony ships and guns and put the British on the run and the Continental Army on its feet again. And though they lost some battles too, the Americans swore they see it through. Their raiding parties shut up, hit and run. At Yorktown, the British could not retreat, bottled up by Washington and the French fleet. Cornwallis surrendered, and finally we had won. When I shot heard around the world, the end of the revolution, the Continental rabble took the day, and the father of our country beat the British there at Yorktown, brought freedom to you and me and the USA. God bless America. Let freedom ring.
Woo, yay. Yep, that's how I learned history. Wow. But hey, got a lot of the stuff there. I'm sure you guys probably fast forwarded through it, but hey, whatever. So, what happens on the way back? This is the top of page 6. So after losing at Concord at the North Bridge there, the British flee back to Boston. It's a good, 20 miles or so. And along the whole way, colonists were shooting at them from trees, from behind fences. There were various skirmishes on the way. And of course, as you guys learned from the Schlesinger video, the colonists used these Indian-style, what we would later call guerrilla tactics, fighting from behind there, making hit-run attacks. And of course, this time it was the Yankees making fun of the British using the song the British had used to make fun of the Americans. The song was Yankee Doodle. And of course, it becomes a theme song of it. Yankee Doodle indeed. Keep it up. Yankee Doodle dandy. So before it's all over, the British have lost quite a few men in this day. Doesn't seem like many today. I think it was like 125 dead, several hundred wounded. And they make their way back into Boston, where a siege begins. Now, 16,000 militiamen from all over New England will surround Boston. Gage's redcoats will be trapped there for 11 months until finally they evacuate in of March of 1776. So you guys can see here kind of how Boston used to be kind of on this thin little kind of peninsula. I think a lot of this area has been filled in now. It's not quite as distinctive as that. But anyway, so Boston goes under siege. Now, in May, if you guys remember, the First Continental Congress had said the Second Continental Congress would meet. Well, they show back up May 10th, and what has happened? There's a revolution on. Blood has been shed. But they do make one last attempt. This will be known as the Olive Branch Petition by Joseph Galloway. Joseph Galloway and quite a few Continentals still wanted to fix the thing. I mean, it's like, the marriage ain't working, so you're trying to get counseling, right? Let's go one more time, honey. This time it'll work. Let's get back together. And so, they offer sort of a system here where they'll have a president that's selected by the king, and there'll be various elected officials and representatives by the colonies, sort of America operating as sort of a state, but in semi-independent state of Great Britain. Of course, the king will have none of this, and but it is one last attempt. You guys, of course, know an olive branch is something you offer to somebody that you've been fighting with or arguing with as a hope to solve it, right? I know you guys know that term. All right, now, if you guys turn to page 139 of your comic book, I'm going to go ahead and hopefully, let's see if I can get the camera back on here. Yeah. Okay, 139, you guys will find in that handout I gave you a list of the two sides of the forces. Actually, 140 is the one that has advantages and disadvantages. Yeah, it's page 140 right behind it. And I know you probably can't see it on here. You definitely wouldn't be able to see it in class. But I do want you guys to read through these and to look at, say, the British versus the Americans. And, look at the advantages that each has. Look at the disadvantages that each have. And of course, somebody's advantage, say, the British, is the disadvantage of the Americans and vice versa. But, the British had the Indians. They had a lot more men, and they were better trained. They had more money. They had Hessian mercenaries, these soldiers that are hired to fight that came from Hesse in Germany, or what is today Germany. But, of course, a big, big difference. The British aren't fighting for a cause, right? They aren't like the Americans fighting for their freedom. Their officers, after a battle called Bunker Hill, aren't going to press the advantage. Generals like General Howe many times had the colonists on the run, and had they just pressed on one more afternoon or evening, they might have been able to take Washington and end it. This is also going to be a big problem, the distance from their home base, a long, long supply line. You guys have heard a lot about supply chains. Well, imagine 6 weeks to let them know you needed something and 6 weeks for it to get over there. They also had a very, very large coastline, America did, that made it hard for the British to try to blockade them. And of course, there was always that threat that Britain, who had made a lot of enemies, can you say the French, can you say the Spanish, America would be able to get people to help them. And indeed they did, and that turned to be the turning point. The British had nobody of the character, at least, of Washington. Yeah, he makes mistakes. The Americans have more motivation. They know their territory. They're playing on their home ground. Some experienced officers and a few Americans will have this American or Kentucky rifle that was much more accurate. It was slow to load, but it was much, much more accurate. Now, of course, a lot of our soldiers are inexperienced. They're fairly young. They weren't trained for very much. And when they enlisted, when they joined, they only joined for a season to a year. We had basically no Navy except what the French gave us. We would use instead privateers. These were ships that were basically, you were given permission to be Jack Sparrow, to be a pirate. We never had enough money, and Congress never gave enough money. So they printed a lot of paper money that was called Continentals. There was even a phrase back in the day, y'all, called, that ain't worth the Continental, meaning it ain't worth you know what. And of course, they had to fight loyalist people who were too fighting for a cause, fighting on their own ground. So I do want you guys to look at that, and in your mind, tell me what you think were probably the greatest advantages the Brits and the Americans had, and why, and what you think the greatest disadvantages the Americans and the Brits had, and why you think those were. Pick two of them. Now, when you guys go to back to page, let's see, is it up above that? Page 139. Let's see here, Mr. D. Yeah, I think if you go back to page 139, you'll see what we call the balance of forces here, where we compare the size of the American armies to the size of the British Army here, okay? And look at those numbers, kind of compare them. And I want you guys to kind of write just a sentence or two comparing the differences in size and the composition, who is in those different groups. You'll notice, for example, that African Americans served on both sides, right? And notice who Native Americans tended to pick, and look at some of those things. It's just good to know that. Now, the next thing is, I'll ask you, what do you think is the greatest disparity of here? What's the one that will hurt the Americans the most? So if you're a betting man or a woman, betting person, I guess, what do you think the odds are they're going to win? You mean, don't say, well, we win. I know we win. Well, of course you know we win. But look at it at the beginning. You don't know that the French are going to help. You don't know that the Spanish are going to help. Do you think we stand a snowball's chance in HE double hockey stick in winning this thing? So give me some odds. Justify why you think those odds are the same. And then, of course, I have a few questions here. Who are mercenaries? Where did George III find them? Think about their motivation, why they're fighting. And then I want you to look at least at what they say the fractions of Americans could be called patriots, or patriots as they pronounced it then, or Whigs. What fraction of Americans could be called Tories or loyalists to the British? And then finally, what do you think, if it was a third and a third, what do you think the other third were? So with this, y'all, we got the revolution on, like Donkey Kong. And I want you guys to be thinking about that. I'll be getting you guys a video over the revolution itself. I hate to kind of rush through it, but, we are on a time limit thing. I'm already behind. I'm always behind, but I'm less behind than usual. So I'm making progress. All right. I'll leave you guys there. Thank you for your attention. Take care.